Hey, welcome to another episode of Clear Lake Connections, where we talk to the people behind the businesses in Bay Area, Houston, proudly sponsored by UTMB Health. Today's special guest is Mitchell. You're with RISKEVAL Safety Solutions.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the business. What is it you do there?
So just recently created the business last year. It's still getting off the ground, and it is there to provide help for companies that normally don't have someone like me on the payroll. It's like Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call if somebody gets hurt? If you need a program, training, a lot of the large facilities around here, like say Shell, oil and gas, you can't just walk on their job site and work, right? You have to have programs, you have to have trainings, you have to have everything in line to even bid on the job. And some of the small companies don't know where to start, so that's what I'm here for, is to provide them the opportunity to be able to grow.
Yeah. So how'd you get started in this?
By accident. Really did. I was in law enforcement. I was a shift sergeant, and a gentleman local had a fiberglass business, and I knew of the business, but I didn't realize what he did and how big it was. He called me up one day. I just recently handled a case for him, and he said, "Hey, I need a safety guy on a job site. Would you be interested?" And I said, well, safety. He said, well, you just check fire extinguishers. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty easy. What's it pay? He said, well, what do you make? And I said, I make $22,000 a year as a sergeant. He said, I'll double that, pay for your travel, pay for your living, pay for your clothing, even pay for your food. And I was like, done. And I went 2 weeks later. I was on a job in Georgia at a Southern company fossil plant, and I learned very fast it was a lot more than checking fire
I figured it would be.
But I didn't know. I mean, I'd never even heard of safety. Didn't know what safety was.
Yeah.
And that was 19 years ago. So I've been doing this almost 2 decades.
Yeah, and you're right. Some organizations are forced to put in a safety officer and name them in minutes, and so we have one at work as well. But so tell me how that blossomed into what you're doing now.
So I've always, I say it, and it's never meant as a negative, but I call myself a nerd all the time. I've craved knowledge, right? Always curious. And so I got on the job site, and, obviously, just like we just said, a lot more than checking fire extinguishers. And as I learned more, I became more curious of how does this work, right? I don't know if you've ever seen the videos, how do they make chocolate, right? Mm-hmm. What is safety? How does this work? And the more I learned, the more I realized that it wasn't there. I was watching other contractors doing it the wrong way, or guys that had been doing it for a long time weren't giving the correct answers to me. And I didn't want to be set for failure. So I started learning, and it just grew from there. So now, 19 years later, I have a master's degree and I'm board certified, because that crave for knowledge has never stopped. And that's where RISKEVAL comes in is, I don't want to give misinformation. I don't want to lead someone the wrong way, because in what we do, somebody can get hurt. And you can't take that back. There's no rewind button, right? So I found a niche for people. I want people to be safe. I want them to go to work. I want you to have a constructive day at work, but I want you to go home the same way you came in. Maybe a little dirty and tired, right? Yeah. But I want you to be able to go home and see that family.
So you mentioned the word niche, which the organization I work for, we're definitely a niche. We know our niche. Who's your ideal kind of client?
Ideally is the company that's not large enough to pay someone 6 figures a year to oversee their safety department. It's more of a company that they want to grow. They have the ability to grow. But in the safety realm, they just need some assistance. Again, Ghostbusters, who are you going to call? And I want to be that guy. I want to be able to, you call me and it'd rather be an industrial hygiene issue, maybe safety programs, maybe it's something as simple as, hey, we got some forklifts on here. I need someone, to help me certify these guys on the forklift. It could be a whole plethora of different things.
So the word safety is very broad in this sense.
Safety is hugely broad, and it is also important from an ethics standpoint, though, that no one says, well, I know everything there is to safety. If they say that, that's actually, to me, a very dangerous statement to make. But do I know a lot? Yes. And I know enough.
You definitely know when something's not safe, right?
Exactly. I know when to recognize the red flag. And again, a lot of these, so COVID brought out safety that people never heard of, right? Like the N95 masks. All of a sudden, everybody was an expert in it. And gentlemen and ladies in my field are going, no. And we see that. So, like I said, some of these large companies, they need to have programs to get on the site. You can't just download a program offline and turn it in. It's not going to work. And it's not going to fit your company. So, again, that's where you call someone like me, and we help create a custom program for you and your company to be able to get into the market and what you're looking for. Again, keep people safe. I know that sounds so general, but
it sounds like you've almost got a built-in mechanism, because these companies, if they want to get bigger and work with the big boys, they have to have these programs in place.
It's not an option. OSHA is very, very clear on it, that you have to train your employees in the hazards and risks associated with their tasks. And you have to show that training. And I can't tell you, even the company I first started with to check fire extinguishers, I didn't have any documentation for training. I didn't even know it was necessary. So a lot of these companies are operating right now and don't recognize with the situation that they're in, right? And when it comes to like citations from OSHA, that would be considered a willful violation. That's over $130,000 per citation. A lot of your small companies, that's out of business, right? I mean, I can't write a check for that.
And they'd be better off hiring somebody like you that would cost hopefully a little less than a daily fine.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't even be 10% of that, and that saves you that money.
Yeah.
That keeps you in business. That opens more doors. It keeps people from getting hurt, lowers your insurance rate. When it comes to workman's comp and things of that nature, let's say an incident, before it ever starts, if you have a company of 10 or more people, you've got to have workman's comp insurance, right? You got to be able to protect them. You have to have a safety program. Insurance is going to look at that program. If you don't have that and you can't provide it, that costs more money. If you have that stuff and you walk in prepared, say you hire someone like me to consult, help you, it's affordable. You can actually continue to grow your business. You can be productive. I tell people, safety doesn't make you money, but it saves you money.
Yeah.
And in the long run, it will allow you to be able to make money. So I don't do production. I allow you to keep producing.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said your ideal client is a smaller business that's looking to grow, and that's exactly what you're trying to do with your business.
Yeah, we work hand in hand.
Yeah. So there's some symmetry there, some alignment.
And a lot of people don't recognize that when it comes to the safety, it's not the programs, it's the behaviors. I do, because of everything I've gotten to do in my life, I don't just limit it to safety. RISKEVAL offers leadership training, company compliance, continuity plans, business ethics plans, things of that nature. One of the things that I can tell you that I've always seen throughout the years is the behavior. You can have all the programs all day long, and if they're not enforced or followed, they're just a piece of paper.
Yeah, I've often said that about auditors. So they just check to see if you have policies and procedures in place. It sounds like you take it to the next level, and you're actually looking at, are those policies and procedures in fact being practiced?
Yeah, because it's important. When you go out and you're any type of leader, let's say you're correcting something that's not even safety related, how do you do it? Are you going to get your employees buy in on what you're saying? And so one of the first ways you do that is you're not instructing someone, you're not correcting them, you're coaching them, right? When you hear the word coach, there's no defensive mechanism in your brain. If someone comes out there and tells you what to do, a person may feel naturally want to be defensive, and they're not going to want to listen. So the very first thing that we do is we help you to put those programs in place. And even though we say enforce the program, which creates sometimes a mental defense in your mind, we teach you how to coach that program. That's the culture. If you don't have a safety culture, all you have is a piece of paper, and that's not going to bring people home safely at night.
Yeah.
And that's the whole goal. At the end of the day, that's the goal.
So you said you're a lifelong learner.
Yes.
My wife sometimes calls that multi-potentiality. and you brought in a couple of woodworking pieces that you've been doing. Tell me about your hobby and just why you like learning so much. What is it that stimulates you?
Growing up in the South, I was at the time considered learning disabled. Come to find out years later, I'm actually autistic. Again, in the South in the 80s, they didn't know autism. You're either in this class or that class. But I was always curious, always wanting to learn. And as I grew older, that mentality just stayed there. And I started woodworking. I served in the United States Marine Corps. I had some things happen. It created PTSD. And my therapist said, you need to do something with that takes your mind and your hands and gets you busy. If you have too much idle hands, and idle mind, it goes into a dark place you don't want to be. And so I saw some YouTube videos. I bought some tools from Harbor Freight and said, okay, let's do this. And made a lot of mistakes, learned the hard way.
Well,
and,
at least you followed your safety protocols, and you still have all your fingers.
I have all my fingers, all my toes, yes. But you learn that, I will tell you that working in the wood shop, as a craft, I have done rigging, but I haven't been a welder and stuff like that. But working in the wood shop makes you really appreciate the importance of wearing ear protection, wearing eye protection, wearing gloves. The importance of not wearing gloves around rotating equipment.
Oh, yeah.
It takes those, again, it takes the programs and the rules and the standards and regulations, and it helps you make them applicable to the field.
It sounds like it was the perfect side hustle for you.
It was. It was. And
because it can be very dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. And it opens your eyes to things on the field. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an electrician and they're working in a big box and they're terminating. And what that means is they have hundreds, if not thousands, of little teeny tiny wires, and they're putting them into these little tiny areas. And you're telling that person, you got to wear a hard hat inside of that. And every time they bend over, the hard hat falls off and hits that panel they're trying to wire up. That does not make for a safe condition to work in. And they're in a controlled room. There's no overhead hazards, nothing there. That's where someone like me has to use that common sense and go, okay, the standard's not black and white. We have to make it applicable to what these gentlemen and ladies are doing. And that's where we write a variance for that project and say, okay, when they're in this room and they're terminating these boxes, they don't wear a hard hat. But when they get up and walk away from the work area, they need to put a hard hat on. And I can give you scenarios of that all across the board, but that's what takes a person like I learned from when I first started that didn't know to how I've come to where I am now, because I started recognizing, hey, you guys are actually making it more hazardous, not less.
Yeah.
And our job as a safety professional is not to hinder the work, it's to help you. We want you to be productive. If there's not a project, where am I going to be, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a project to be on. So you want people to be successful. You want them to be productive. You want them to be safe. You want them to go home safe.
Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for your service, both military and law enforcement. And it sounds like this safety thing is another form of service.
It is 100%. There, I think back to days when I was in boot camp, Parris Island, and oh yeah, how great that was. But safety was there. I didn't recognize it back then. In 1999, I'm just out of high school, still picking boogers, don't know nothing about life. And looking back now, all these years later, 25 years later, and there was safety my drill instructors followed that I didn't recognize at the time.
Yeah.
But thankfully they had it, because it kept me from getting hurt.
Yeah.
Heat exhaustion.
Well, in the gun range, obviously,
yeah.
Nothing but safety.
Yeah, nothing but safety there. So all of it just goes across so it's always, it goes back to risk assessments. What are the risks? What are the hazards and the risks associated with? And a lot of people don't recognize a hazard and a risk are two different things. But it doesn't matter what line of work you're in. Even if you work at the Chamber of Commerce, there are risks associated in this office. And it's important that people take the time to recognize that.
We call them Sherry.
Sherry.
Can you bring those over so we can show them? I want people to see these works of art. And so it sounds like that your safety journey is like a continuum of you kept the country safe, you kept the streets safe, and now you're keeping the workplace safe. So that's really cool.
I appreciate that. It's and it's not always something you do consciously. It's just caring.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about any boss you've ever had in the past, when you had a person in position of leadership that cared, look at the people under them, right? And law enforcement, military, any type of profession, it's the same thing. And so there's a lot of days I don't recognize until someone like yourself says, hey, you know, I can see that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's there. It's just being a big heart, having taken the time to want to make a difference. And sometimes you don't recognize it. It comes natural. Yeah.
Mitchell, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything else you want the audience to know, or?
I hear everybody on the job sites. They always, you know, the supervisors, they say, go out there and keep them safe. Really and truly, it's yourselves as individuals that keep things safe. So if I was to leave any parting words in the profession that I do, in the profession that a lot of people out there have, be mindful of your brothers and sisters in the workforce. Pay attention, situational awareness. Let that be a practice. And
safety's not one person's job, it's everybody's job.
It's everybody's job. Especially when someone's had a bad day. You know, maybe they're hungry. Maybe they didn't sleep well last night. Maybe they had an argument at the house. But there are co-workers there, and they can see if they're lagging behind, and that's where they can be. I heard it years ago, and they called it be your brother's keeper. Do that. Watch out for each other.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt a bit.
Yeah.
Watch out for each other. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Mitchell. It was great. Appreciate it. And check out this art. And if you'll hold that one up, I mean, that is craftsmanship right there.
Thank you.